It's been a while since I've done this. May as well go the whole hog. Talk about something a bit personal. If you've been watching podcasts now called the weekly workshops, which are Wednesdays, 7 p.m. UK time, and if you can't watch them live, you can catch them on the live section of our main YouTube channel, you'll know that I have sobered up. And when I say I've sobered up, I haven't cut down or had a rest. I've sobered up. And the reason for that is, the reason I've had to give up the booze is because turns out, this is apt, I'm a raging alcoholic. I think I've known for a while, and I think maybe some of you have had opportunity to point it out at points throughout this vlog. It's not been easy, but I'm now on, 483 days. But up here, I'm only a week sober. In that thing behind me, up in the air, the saloon in the sky, where all bets were off. And of course, these places, airports, and their amazing airport time. During the First World War, because of concerns for the amount of alcohol that wives of absent soldiers were imbibing, a deal was struck between various different church and lobbying groups whereby they weren't to introduce prohibition, but instead reduced the alcohol content of beer, which is why British ale is weaker than lager, and introduced something called licensing laws. So as a Brit, even in this day and age, you have a firm sense of when is the right and wrong time to drink. And in airports, these rules don't apply. The bar for me of what defined an alcoholic, I conveniently started out as, well, I don't drink every day, but as of 1997 I started doing that. Then it wasn't, I don't drink during the day, soon shimmied that particular marker, until it was like, well, I'm not having it for breakfast, not pouring it on my cornflakes. But the thing is, with these places, and me being a Willie, work in London, live in Edinburgh, was that whilst I wasn't pouring it on my cornflakes 3 times a week, I definitely was having it with my cornflakes at about 6 o'clock in the morning. It's one of the reasons why I find it really difficult to actually look at these vlogs these days, because, and it pains me to admit this, these walkie aroundy vlogs, whenever you saw me doing that, I was pretty much 90% of the time completely hammered. And the tutorials, well, I never drank whilst I walked, but that doesn't mean to say that I wasn't in a complete alcoholic fog, and often, more times than not, an absolutely Orwellian hangover. I used to pride myself on the fact that it didn't seem to affect me as much as others. Therefore, probably wasn't doing as much harm. Who was I trying to kid? I was just very good at masking it. I come from a long line of actors, after all. And I think I used to describe myself somewhat flippantly as a high-functioning alcoholic. I've since learned that there's really no such things as different types of alcoholic. It's more stages. And certainly for me, I passed quite suddenly and very rapidly from being a functioning one to a very dysfunctional one. In the period that started with my dad dying, and then COVID, and then my mum dying, and then some really awful stuff happened with work, and that's when, but I'm getting ahead of myself. From what I can gather, where alcoholism and addiction is concerned, it's a mixture of nature and nurture. There are so many reasons why we need that anesthetic, that escape. And I think it's very common for us to look for the root cause. But it turns out that in many people who suffer from this stuff, there's actually a physical difference, that it appears more almost like an allergy. I remember the first time I got drunk, and I remember the sensation genuinely being the best I'd ever felt, the happiest I've ever been. And I just presumed that's what it was like for everyone. It's not the case. And they've done some studies, and apparently in a lot of alcoholics, the the effects of alcohol is not dissimilar to that of E. I couldn't tell you because I've never done that. Or Molly, I think the Americans call it. Good flight. So I'm now another day sober in the air. Didn't touch a drop, had a few wobbly moments. Alcohol serves a purpose when you don't feel comfortable in your skin, which is, for me, when I was 14, 15. My first drunk was when I was 14, I think. The addiction takes hold, and for me it was over 35 years. How at first it was, I found a cure I didn't know was available for the discomfort I felt myself. I mean, who doesn't at that age? But then over a period of time, you're guaranteed to feel that discomfort unless you drink. And then you feel that discomfort because you're drinking, or not drinking, or hungover. I developed horrible paranoia, panic attacks. And I guess the second big thing for me was when I was 25, I had a brain hemorrhage, had to have brain surgery. And I remember quite consciously, from that moment on, deciding that I was going to smash life. So if it was a good day, a bad day, or a boring day, there'd always be an excuse to drink. At that point, my benchmark for alcoholism was drinking every day. So I very purposely drank every other day until I became a touring musician. What better way to discover a Peter Pan-like existence than the music industry? So, feeling uncomfortable, brain hemorrhage, working musician, then decided to remain single well into my 30s and moved to Soho. For those of you who don't know London, Soho is a place that is far from sober. And then set up this company by mistake, and that just blew out of all acceptable proportion. Generated a culture there that was centered around drinking. Decided to do what's called a geographical shift. The problem wasn't me, it was where I was. So moved to Edinburgh. I always think it's interesting when people do a geographical. It's like to places like Dublin or Edinburgh. It's never to Riyadh, where you're unlikely to drink as much. Moved to Edinburgh with a real ambition to live cleaner, but moved opposite a really beautiful pub. So put that off for the best part of a decade. So I bumbled along, kind of bounced along, expanding my Overton window. Well, I do drink every day, but I'm not heavily into spirits. And then obviously moving to Scotland, got quite heavily into whiskey. And it was actually here where something kind of big happened. The thing, whatever you want to call it, the condition, passed from being that of being a cure-all to being like a mistress. To quote the single most terrifying words I think ever uttered to celluloid, I'm not going to be ignored. And it wasn't in this room, this is way nicer, but it was in a room like it in this hotel where this thing, the minibar, you'll notice it doesn't have any alcohol in it. It went from being a minibar to a medicine cabinet. I was shaking so hard I couldn't actually use my computer, which, if you know my job, is suboptimal. And that was the first time that I admitted to some close friends that I thought I was an alcoholic. What did I do about it? Absolutely fuck all. And it took another 2 years of crazy. That's the hardest thing. Just asking for help, being told by my doctor 6 months before possibly a major stroke, seeing as I've already had one of those when I was 25. Probably wouldn't be as lucky this time, or certainly would be playing with the laws of probability. I'd been diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. I was on 8 different pills a day for the various different physical and mental side effects of being just an unflinching boozoid. I remember someone saying I don't drink too much because I like drinking too much. Just the idea of not having it in your life, it was, I don't know, it was like, it genuinely felt like saying I never want to see one of my kids again. It was that bad. I remember the doctor saying, is that is there any way I can convince you to stop drinking? And I just go, no. And there's a really good phrase I've learned, this idea of being terminally unique. The problems are so unique to me that I'm willing to progress down a path that is terminal simply because no one understands the very unique problems, issues, circumstance, demands that I have placed on me. Found a place that I went to get some advice of how I could maybe temper things a bit, or, cut down, or indeed have maybe a bit of a circuit breaker. Just stop for a bit. Within minutes of going to that place, I realised that, one, I wasn't alone, and two, by saying I wasn't alone, meant that I was definitely an alcoholic. This may seem incredibly indulgent, me talking about this to such an extent, but if there's one thing that I've tried to do with this YouTube channel and this vlog, is to speak honestly, to really try and focus as much as possible on the positive, not the negative, but also, wherever I can, offer my experience up as something that could possibly help, but with particular reference to alcohol, which is so completely pervasive within the world of music. In fact, to not have even died by the time you're 27 is often a sign of not being as successful as you could have been. Our industry offers no support or empathy for the dangers of this slightly Peter Pan, nocturnal culture that we live within. So to tell my story, but to give it a positive slant, and that is that, touch wood, the outcome for today seems to be positive, is something that I think is important to do. But also, that thing that I mentioned back at Heathrow, I think it was, that I find it difficult to watch many episodes of this vlog, because for many of them I was blackout drunk. It's harrowing, and I think it's important that I come clean with you on that also. I always do it. Every time I come across to LA, I think I've got this jet lag thing absolutely licked, because yesterday was my first full day here in LA. Went to bed maybe about 10 o'clock at night, woke up at 6 o'clock feeling refreshed, because basically I'd been up for 2 days. Today, went to bed at 10 o'clock last night and woke up at, it's 1:09 in the morning, which basically means I'll be like for the next 2 or 3 hours, and then I will crash again. So what I'm going to do is, because we've got the workshop stroke podcast to do, is there's a bit of a pre-record. It's something I really dislike about watching people on Zoom and stuff like that. When you see an untidy bed, there's something maybe slightly OCD-ish about it. It's when you see that, I don't know, you kind of see their bum prints on the bed. I find it off-putting. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this desk, move it forward, and actually sit behind it with the shutters behind my head. Maybe it's because of the jet lag, but I'm already with this thing peak snark. I say peak snark, it's, when you just feel like there's a snarky engineer behind this, someone going, well, if you haven't got a pair of headphones without the big doobies, then you're not welcome here. Whereas if you're using it portably, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be using it. 99 times out of 10, you're going to be using it with something with a mini jack. I don't have big jacks with me, so can't use the headphones. Boot up Logic and nowhere to be seen. And that's because it's not class compliant. Right, so that's the pre-record done after stressing out about this Volt thing. But this on record, absolute beauty. That's the podcast done. Got a meeting. I think it's really, really important as just a basic kind of methodology in life to just stick at stuff and be faithful to the commitments you make. That's what I apply to stuff like these podcasts and our YouTube schedule and all of that kind of stuff, is that, to form a relationship with people, quite an extraordinary effort. It's well worth it, even if it does knack you out. And it's just lovely to see friendly faces on the podcast and lots of great comments and stuff. And I think that Suzuki may be getting a few Omnicord sales. He certainly got one out of me last week, but he won me a gig, so I'm happy. Right, 5:45 in the morning. Today's the walk the hall day. I'm going to go down to Anaheim, which is about an hour away from Santa Monica. I'm just going to sit down and do something I don't really enjoy doing, and that is planning. I don't think you can really underestimate the size of NAM.
Hey there, Christian.
Yeah, that's me.
마치가 섞이니까 빛이야만 정상이 돼 세상을 바꾸는 우리니까 뜨거운 함성 그대로 서로를 바라보잖아 나팔을 울렸을 때도 You and I 천천히 올라가잖아 곳에서 우리는 소라타
The bass is a semitone higher than it should be. The first times I've actually used the barbershop pole sign. Handy. Oh, it's going to be a beautiful morning. Right. So, first things first, picking up the badge. So I can thank the barber for not turning up, so I've got it here earlier. Okay, back again. Got a couple of hours till it opens, till I'm allowed in. Exhibitors are allowed in earlier. That's the fear sneeze. You can always tell when your server hasn't been to Sunday school. All credentialed up. Can I be candid? On the way down here, just started having this overwhelming wave of anxiety. And it's not about the number of people here, or the noise, or the smells. Can get quite smelly here. I think it's coming to terms with the fact that it's, in the nicest possible way, returning back to the scene of the crime a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to go into stuff, but there's a lot of history here for me. And it's so confusing, that kind of, there's people I really don't want to bump into. A few absolute arseholes who just avoid, and you kind of know they're going to be here. There's a bit of that, but it's also just coming to terms with being a bit older, a bit wiser, about looking back on the past and understanding the magnitude, phenomenal magnitude of the Kruger-Dunning effect. I'll let you look that up with regards to my history, particularly here. Sorry if I'm being cryptic, but I just want to get it off my chest. Massive amount of anxiety, paranoia. With what I've been talking about on this trip, that's like when you start getting inside your own head and things start going around. That's when it tends to become beer o'clock quite early, which is why I've got this beacon, this pilgrimage that I'm pinning my hopes on, but also with an exit strategy, and that is really, really important. And that is, I'm going to be here for 2 hours, and then I'm out. Pilgrimage. So just about got the smell of the eggy farts out of my nostrils, and today, big meeting. What I tend to do when I come to LA is book in a few meetings, and I have a co-conspirator who I'd like to talk to, who I'm talking to later. A bit nervous for that meeting because you always want these trips to be a success. Also thought I'd just finish up the booze thing, and I promise that this is not going to become a sobriety vlog, but I was just thinking it's just nice sitting here in this rather wonderful room with a beautiful view. And it was just over 2 years ago, I think, or just under 2 years ago, I was here with a friend who is vastly more successful than I. Both of us agreed that we were probably drinking too much. I don't think my friend knew quite the level to which I'd achieved the pinnacle. I can't remember who it was that said it, but I think we just kind of said to each other, look what we've done, whilst being total boozoids. Imagine what we could achieve without that mistress. And it was really wonderful to see John Mayer talking along very similar lines of with the booze, you got 60% of him. And since giving up the booze, you got 100% of him, and he went on 4 tours that year and stuff. I think he's maybe a year or so ahead of me. I still did absolutely feck all, but I think it did light a kind of bit of it set that spark off, that idea that really if you're looking to fight, to take it up to 11, and there's that big chunk of your existence is being somewhat disabled by what is, particularly at the levels I was drinking, a poison for both physical and mental. So that lit something for me. I'm not going to talk about what happened that made me go, no. It was relatively low key, but it was just, I did the accounts and I just went, I'm now, with this habit, running at a total net loss. So I went and got help. And I think that is one of the real problems, is admitting that you have a problem and then seeking help, and help is out there. I'm not going to talk about where I went and what I did. Anyway, what's happened since then is the anxiety and the paranoia disappeared. So I'd been diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. It just literally disappeared within 2 or 3 days. The blood pressure returned to that of, someone of my age. And I felt that I'd got not my life back, but definitely a portion of it. And also, I think most of all, my brain, in the sense that so much time was self-bargaining and calculating how many hours till first drink. Oh, I wonder if I can do that. That would be a good excuse for all of those kind of things. Has it been easy? It's difficult to kind of qualify it, really. Easier than having kids, easier than giving up smoking, which is different for everyone. I would say the thing it's most similar to is like having your heart broken, and it just takes time to stop thinking about that person. But there will always be a time in your life when you will reflect and think about them. And the points at which you weaken yourself are the points at which you're most at risk of maybe giving that person a dodgy text or a booty call or whatever it is, just to, again, exhaust the metaphor. So I think the one thing I just have to really avoid is this thing called HALT, which is hungry, which I think also means thirsty. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. You feel the effects of these more. You feel the effects of stress more. You feel the ups and downs more. And as a consequence, you start to manage life in a way that doesn't take account of the possibility of an anesthetic. So eradicating stuff that puts you at danger. And it's not the danger is not the alcohol. The danger is always there. It's if you're needing to anaesthetize, you've done yourself harm. It's something you're in a situation which is hurting. Well, I'm probably pretty much certain that you've probably heard enough about it, really. But every day is a thing, and I guess what it does, the big major change is it makes me look forward to tomorrow, not dread it. There are points in life where the immediate gratification of a drink is missed, but the delayed gratification that I didn't have a drink, usually the next day, seems to be way much greater than the enjoyment of a drink. Because for me, a drink isn't just a drink, it's oblivion. All I really wanted to say is, if you feel that it's something to look into, there is help out there. I just think the first step is to admit you have a problem and that maybe you want to cut down or give up. I'm not going to do that. Life is brilliant without it. It's definitely better, but that's only because it got so bad for me, and it gets so bad for so many people. And I think I live life better. I think I give more. Certainly a better dad. That's good enough for me. Early start today, so it's 5:05. I think what we'll do is head down to Nam earlier rather than later, maybe 6 o'clock, get there for 7. It's difficult when you go down to Anaheim because if you leave super early, you get there super early. If you leave just a little bit later, you can be late because of all of the traffic and stuff. But what's really, really exciting is if you check out this, I'll just get it all loaded up. Just downloaded this, which is our new engine that we've been building. The first thing that we've got is gong piano. But the idea is to create an environment that everyone feels has a familiar layout. So every time people load something of ours, they don't have to learn a new UI, if you know what I mean. Particularly like setting some arbitrary conventions for what we're making moving forward, as in like you've got 5 fingers in your left hand, so 5 key switches always, never more, never less. Something that we've been working on a lot is the idea of samples that are contextual to the modes and scales that you're playing in. So just working on a way of being able to demonstrate the different modes that things are appropriate for, with a transpose tuning function. We've got our signals here, which are going to be less to do with microphones and more to do with that new thing that I call partials, and then macros, which seem to be popular with everyone, with the volts range, which is, instead of having loads and loads of different things to tweak with, just some really cool effects that are curated for each thing that we make. This all kind of looks nice and smooth and feels nice. I think there's one thing I want to do is maybe get rid of the visible dot in there. I don't know, it's something quite nice about it though. Not sure. So not only do you have the different signals or partials, you can actually tune them individually, which I think is pretty cool. Got our different things there. This is not going to be present in our initial release, so there'll be a little overlay, info overlay, but also a for people who are sight impaired, a sight impaired view. We're going to do that, and you get a little wink, which is nice. What else? Yeah, just working on making it a little bit more intuitive as to which one's 1 and which one's 2, because we've got this like nested control here. But it's sounding good, and I'm quite happy with the look. It feels like it kind of works the brand well, seems to lock everything in, and the gong piano is sounding amazing, and I can't wait to share with you it marks a new approach to sampling, which is, I think, with a small g, a new generational attitude towards the technology of sampling and how you approach how samples deal with the different aspects of sound: fundamental, harmonic, transient, which you can see we've kind of gotten the key up here. So we've been plugging on, even with all of the massive stuff going on here at NAMM. Looking forward to the coffee arriving, and then down to jolly Anaheim for some chicken and waffles. As I kind of predicted, I'm here an hour and 10 hours, an hour and 10 minutes as expected here, hour and 10 minutes early. And here we all are, chicken and waffles. Maddie's here. Maddie. Proposed breakfast, very nice. Chickens do go with waffles. Lovely group of people. Lots of conversations, lots of war stories. So that's the end of this leg of my US trip. I think I'll leave it there for this week. Hope you don't mind me airing my dirty knickers a little bit about the issue, but I've linked some stuff down below for anyone who maybe is struggling a bit, wants to find out more about it, or has a family member. And yeah, I love this country, love LA, love California. I've just had a lovely breakfast with some lovely people. Now heading to New York, which is unwise. See if I get snowed in and trapped and can't get home. Subscribe if you haven't done, and one of those helps us because the algorithm likes it. When the algorithm likes us, it helps us. See you soon.